Okay, so this is a common problem I see in a lot of homes. We have an air conditioner unit and it's plugged into an extension cord that goes about 12 feet over that way. As you can see, there's no outlet here, so I highly advise you put a dedicated circuit for an air conditioner unit. Some of these old homes built in the 1900s might even still have knob and tube wiring, and it was never designed to hold the power load of something like this. So I'm going to show you real quick how to go run a dedicated circuit down to your main panel and put in your own dedicated outlet. Okay, so I really, you want to make it so it's convenient. So I'm just going to put it directly underneath the window frame so that they can just plug this right in. And what I'm going to use is one of these remodel boxes. So this is what's great about these is that you could just cut the hole and it has little tabs on them so that they can pinch into the drywall. So this works out well for just a standard outlet. If you need a GFI outlet, you want to get the bigger type of boxes. This is not going to do very well for a GFI outlet. It just doesn't have enough room to use it. So, all right, so we'll just simply, we already have a hole here because it used to be a cable line that used to come in there, I guess. So let's just go ahead and mark out our outlet. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my oscillating tool to cut this out neatly. Well, that didn't exactly go as planned. This plaster is kind of falling apart here. Oh well. So as long as these tabs can pull onto the back of the plaster, you should be in good shape. But we're going to get this wire in here first. Now, I have to admit, I am doing a bathroom remodel down below. So this is a heck of a lot easier than if this was an old home and you're trying to run a wire all the way down to the basement. So in a sense, this is, it'll probably feel like cheating to you because if you're trying to do this without having a room down below, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But the same concept goes for running it. A lot of these old homes, 1900s, were balloon framing. So you can basically just fish a wire all the way down to the basement by using some fish sticks. I'll show you that technique here shortly. Okay, so I do have a top plate here, and then I'm basically right here. I have an indicator up top here. So I'm going to drill through my top plate. Fish this up through this hole. Okay, so they do make other fish sticks that are a lot sturdier, and you can connect them together so that you can basically bring them all the way down to the basement. So what you would do if you did not have this easy accessibility is basically put these together, go down through that hole, and then push this all the way through the stud, or the stud bay going down in the basement. Because I'll show you here real quick, you can see that this is all balloon framing and that there is no blockers in between the top plate here and all the way down to the basement. Okay, so as you can see, let me show you here. So looking all the way down through, you see there's no blockers at all. These are all continuous studs going all the way down to the basement. So you can easily just take a fish stick. No, I wouldn't say easily, but you can run a fish stick all the way down through your hole and then try to push it down through the stud bay, and then that should be able to get down to your basement. Now this is a 1910 home, so a lot of the homes back then were balloon framing, but some of them still have blockers, fire blocking if something was redone. And it really, when I redo this bathroom, it's really not it's going to be a good idea to actually put some blockers there for fire blocking essentially. Okay, so my panel is directly below that wall. So again, This is a pretty simple installation here since I already have most of my everything kind of exposed. So I know that this doesn't really help in some situations, but really there's two ways to run the wire. It's either from the bottom going up or from the top coming down. Now, if you didn't have any walls removed like that, I'd probably take it from the top, pull it down so that you can determine where you're pulling it out and get it to the panel. But most important thing is just getting a continuous wire all the way through. I'm going to be using the 20 amp wire. This is just a 2 wire. That's all you need for a dedicated outlet, but you do want it to be 20 amp. So the 12-2 wire is what you would need. So I'm going to simply just unravel a little bit of this and then just fish this up through the wall and then connect it to that fish stick. But you can imagine that if you did have walls all the way through there, you'd be bringing that fish stick down through here and grabbing onto it and then pulling the wire up. Okay, so this is my easy pathway here. I already have it kind of determined here. I'm bringing a lot of other wires up there. Now I'm going to staple all this stuff, but for right now, I'm just going to pull this through an existing hole that I have and bring more of that wire up, and then we'll staple that after I'm done with everything, because you want to make sure that when you're doing your drywall and things that you don't accidentally pinch a wire. So we're just going to use the existing holes that I have here, bring this into the outside wall. Should just drill another hole here. I will. Okay, so now we'll just simply pull this wire up. And tape it onto our fish stick. Okay, so then I'm gonna find our fish stick. Okay. Pull our wire up through here. Okay. All right, we'll just fish it into our box. All right, well, this box is not going to work. Yeah, I don't believe it will. No, it's definitely not going to work. So we're going to go plan B on the box, because this is not going to pinch it properly. So now, one thing about these old homes, it is kind of nice because they got all wood siding on the outside. So I could actually just put a screw into the back of this, get a piece of lumber in the back here. Yeah, I'll get a 2x4 for the back and screw this box into the back, because now my studs are all the way over here. In order for me to get a different type of box, I'm gonna have to cut out a much bigger hole. But this is a nice box, but it really is more designed for drywall. It doesn't really, this little plaster sometimes, you know, it's a hit and a miss sometimes. Okay, so we're just gonna put a block in here. And then we'll just screw it to the wood siding that's on the outside of the house. plywood here. Okay, so I need to space this out a little bit. Get a piece of 1/2-inch plywood in here so that we can screw that box to the back here. Okay, so that's all nice and solid now. That's really the important thing, is just making sure that this box is nice and sound. And then we'll go ahead and put some foam insulation around here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put this outlet in before we connect it to the main panel there. Okay, so make sure you're getting a 20 amp outlet. So usually they have this little side indicator here, but this is a 20 amp outlet, just kind of square looking. We're going to use a little bit of foam insulation to fill this hole in, and we can patch that hole. So just to explain real quick, if you did not have the luxury that I have with being able to run that wire in an open wall downstairs, is just use one of these long bits. When this outlet is out, you can drill down through that bottom plate and then take these fish sticks and connect them together and fish them all the way down to the basement. So definitely a lot more challenging when you don't have a wall open up below, but you know, it would definitely work by just drilling through that top plate here and then just fishing this all the way down. As if you had the balloon framing, if you had a different type of wall system, it's going to make it even a little bit more challenging. Okay, so coming down into the panel here, boy, we really didn't have a whole heck of a lot left here, but let's go ahead and cut this wire. And what we're going to do is just going to use one of these existing Romex connectors here that are already here. You can always put 2 wires into one Romex connector. So I'll just loosen this up and fish that wire into there, because there really isn't any more top pieces to fill. Okay, so we got the wire in. So let's go ahead and take our sheathing off of here. Okay, so we gotta find an empty spot for the ground. So biggest thing about putting your hands in this panel is staying away from the back buses here. So all of these side areas is the neutral and ground. That's not gonna hurt you. The only part that's gonna hurt you is where the breakers are connected. So, but you can always shut off the main breaker if you're uncomfortable, and then connect things. So, but you want to find an individual spot for each of the ground and the neutral. So once you find a spot, just place them in there and tighten the screw. Okay, so then the neutral wire, same thing. Find an empty spot. Okay. And then we'll bring this down to our next spot here. Make sure you tug on these wires, keep it off in the off position. Okay. There we go. Okay, so to patch that hole, we put a little bit of foam in there, so we'll just cut this off. Try to get this put behind the plaster layer. Okay, then we're going to use a little bit of plaster weld. This stuff basically the primer for this. So just put that around wherever you're going to put the plaster, or yeah, wherever you're going to do the patch. It kind of primes it, gets it ready to bond to it well. Okay, so once this is all nice and tacky, I'm just use a little bit of base coat. So the base coat will give that structural durability to the patch, and then you can go ahead and use drywall mud or a finished veneer plaster to go over it to get a nice smooth finish, and then you can prime and paint that surface. So I hope this demonstration has helped you out. It gave you a little bit of indication of what it takes to actually run a new line in a home for an electrical outlet like this. But I highly implore you, if you're new to home ownership, these are the type of things that can be very dangerous, not having a dedicated outlet for something like an air conditioner. So please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much.